I'm so thrilled. We've got a lovely panel here today talking about faith, longing, and singleness. When the ache doesn't go away, where does faith meet longing? Join us for a thoughtful, compassionate conversation exploring the reality many Christian women quietly carry the longing for companionship during seasons that don't resolve quickly. So, before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and switch only over to YouTube. You can watch us live there. And then I'm going to let the panels go ahead and introduce themselves. We'll start up here and go around. So Sharman, Tabitha, and Georgia.
Okay. Hi, y'all. I'm Charmin Kimbrough. I know you've seen me here before, but I am called myself a strategist. People often come to me looking for ways to figure out how to do what they want to do, what they need to do, what their next steps should be. So I am the founder and CEO of livefound.org, and the whole strategy is to find our footing so that we can live found instead of wandering around lost and confused.
Hey, I am Tabitha Westbrook. I'm a licensed counselor supervisor. There's a lot of letters after my name, so we'll just call me Alphabet Soup. But I am the founder and CEO of The Journey in the Process, which is a counseling practice with offices located in Dallas, Texas, and Wake Forest, North Carolina. We also do coaching and we do intensive work, and we specialize in domestic abuse and coercive control in the Christian church. And it is an absolute pleasure to be here today.
Yes, and I'm Georgia Schaefer. I live in South Central Pennsylvania. I'm a professional certified coach, licensed psychologist, and my area of passion is helping women rebuild after separation and divorce. And that's something I love to do, as well as help you deal with your emotions in a healthy, constructive way.
Yes, well, as you can see, we've got a phenomenal panel here today to crush this. All of these ladies have been single later in life or still single. I'm not going to talk about that right here, but just saying they really relate to this subject. They can all understand where we're coming from. So I know they're speaking with empathy and compassion towards you. And so I want to start off with that many women deeply love God, yet still carry an ache for companionship that doesn't seem to go away. Before we get practical, why do you think this longing can feel so confusing or even spiritually lonely? So raise your hand when you're ready to go.
I have a quick answer for that. Because we are created for connection. And so something so very sacred and right about us, when that is disrupted, of course, we're going to feel the loneliness of it. We're going to feel the horror of not being connected. So I think it permeates every psychological dysfunction, actually. But I think that that's why it's so disruptive spiritually, relationally. We're created for connection.
Yeah. And I would say healthy relationships are an essential part of our well-being and ability to flourish. And there's nothing wrong with wanting someone special in our lives. I mean, after all these years, if I come home from speaking to an empty house and it's like, does anybody care I'm here? So it's that ability to connect with others on our life, share our lives, that is so important.
Yeah. I would completely agree with everything that everybody else has said. We are created for that. And I just want to highlight there is not a problem with desiring an intimate partner relationship. Like that's not a bad thing. I think sometimes, especially if you are a survivor of abuse, that folks are like, well, you're not allowed to even feel that way ever again. And it's like, well, no, that's not reasonable. And there's a lot we can do. We're going to talk a lot about what to do with some of those feelings in this course, of our conversation today. But the desire is okay. And we don't have to vilify desire.
Oh, I'm loving this already. I'm like, yeah, let's dive on in. Let's go deeper. So thank you for setting the stage here. Is longing something to be healed, something to steward, or simply something to live alongside? How do each of you understand that tension?
Well, it's definitely not something to fix.
Right.
I'll say that right now. But I think it's a little bit of each. I think it is something to heal if we're longing for that person who hurt us in the past to heal us, or we're just, racked with shame, or our whole identity is tied to whether we have someone special. But I also think it's something to steward, being honest and authentic and giving a voice to this conversation. Good for you, Lauren. It's critical, but it's also a longing to walk alongside. Don't let it control us. Don't let it consume us. Make room for living purposefully too.
Yes.
Again, it's such a sacred part of us, a sacred part of us. And so feeling what you feel about it, especially within the grief, is what gives weight to what was valuable, what is valuable. So, holding it sacred like that also includes guarding your own heart, which looks like stewarding it, carrying it, letting it be what it is, but also finding your stride, finding your footing in a world that is not what God created it to be. So confronted on every side with danger or sorrow or loss, but still being able to step into what's in front of you, including carrying loneliness, carrying the longing, and letting God do what he's going to do with the story, which isn't just like pray more and wait for God to step in. It's like living your life in the moment, holding sacred what is sacred, which means feeling the loss of it. If it didn't matter, you wouldn't be feeling anything about it. So it tells you that it does matter, but still choosing to find your footing in the day, finding your steps to live your life in the day that you're in.
I would agree with both of y'all on that. And the longing that Georgia was talking about, like, if you're looking for someone to complete you, I'd like to remind you that you are already whole, right? That is the Jerry Maguire fallacy. You complete me, my foot. I'm already complete. I'm great. You're icing on my cake, right? And so when we know what we're longing for, are we longing for a partner? Are we longing for that companionship? All of those things are great. Those are desires and longings that we can embrace and consider and wrestle with, but if it's, I need this person to make my life okay, then I would encourage you to get some coaching, get some counseling, get some support, because that is not what relationship does. Even the most wonderful, intimate partner is going to hurt your feelings. They just are. And relationships are hard. They are messy. They're beautiful and good, but they're hard. And so there are going to be times, even in a most wonderful, intimate relationship, that you're going to be like, I really don't like this person today, and I don't know what to do with that, and so those are going to be the things that you'll have to wrestle through. So if you're looking for someone to be your savior, that wouldn't be the best position to come at it from. And there's a great book out there that I think really talks to some of these topics nicely, and that is Elizabeth Woodson's Embrace Your Life. Elizabeth is a Bible teacher. I could listen to her read the phone book and find Jesus. She's got that kind of voice. So if she reads the Audible, 10 out of 10, highly recommend. But the book is phenomenal. And she is an older single woman as well. And so she speaks to some of these things in that book, and living your life, embracing your life. And so there's nothing wrong with praying and seeking the Lord and asking him to bring a wonderful partner. And also, it does not make you less than in your ability to serve the Lord. It doesn't make you less than or incomplete as a woman. It doesn't do any of those things.
Yes. I just want to tag on something Tabby said a minute ago, in that there is pain in healthy and unhealthy relationships. So expect pain, but it's a different kind of pain. In healthy relationships, it's often that iron sharpens iron, where we see the reality of ourselves. But in toxic, unhealthy, it's like trying to destroy who the very person God created us to be. So realize there's pain in both, but differentiate the type of pain. And we all, even in healthy relationships, have our moments. So that's part of it too.
Yes, I think it's Leslie Vernick that says the pain is different, that one is crushing our soul and destroying our personhood and who we were created to be. One is part of pain of the flesh that we get to grow and learn from. And so when we see those differences there, we can be like, yeah, is this destroying me as a person? Or is this God refining me, and I need to learn a few things in my life? Because all relationships, whether you have children, friends, coworkers, whatever it is, they all have refining elements to them. So I'm really glad you brought those things out, because we have to learn to no relationship's going to feel peaceful. I'm going to throw one thing out there. So I remember telling my therapist at the time, I was like, man, I want everything to be perfect. I want it to all be good. She's like, describe that. What is perfect? And I was like, just no conflict in life. Everything's great. And da, 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 da. And they're like, that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. So I think we got to stop and say, are we looking for marriage as a place, or relationships as a place of escape, as a place that we think everything will finally be complete, my redemption's done, I'll be happy, I'll be loved? If it is, you need to go talk to some of these people here and they will be able to help guide you and work through that. So I'm really glad y'all mentioned that. And I want to jump into my next question. And I have questions that are directed towards each individual here. So I kind of want to pull on their expertise. My next question is directly, we'll start with Georgia. And that is, from a psychological perspective, what happens emotionally when a season of waiting lasts longer than we expected?
Well, emotionally, we can experience every emotion in the book. And not any one emotion is bad. It's what we do, how we express it, how we deal, what we do or don't do with it. But it's also, how do we frame that experience? I am not a patient person when it comes to waiting. And so that's real, that's honest. And many times I wish it was over. And, I feel like David in How Long, O Lord? But what we want to avoid is that compare and despair, looking at our life in that long waiting and comparing it to those around us, or this attitude of resignation. Well, this is my life. Might as well get used to it. Or in the long season of waiting, we want to protect ourselves. What's the story we start telling ourselves? There's something wrong with us. Well, the truth is, there's something wrong with all of us. Or I'm unlovable. I don't deserve to be in a special relationship, or God's repaying me for past mistakes. My desires, feelings don't matter to God. He really doesn't have my best interest. So what are we telling ourselves? It's not the feelings are right or wrong. Again, we want to look at them, but how do we move through those and deal constructively with them?
I love that. I love what you're saying about moving constructively through them and recognizing them, instead of being like, oh, feelings are there for a reason, and they're telling us something is going on. So it's looking within. So thank you. Is there anything else you may wanted to add to that?
You talking to others or me?
Oh, anybody else? I guess, well, we can jump to the next question. That's for everybody. And that is, many Christian women, oh, I am very sorry. Lost my question there. I apologize. Many Christian women feel pressure to be content or grateful, even when they're hurting. Where do you see faith helping women, and where do you sometimes see faith language unintentionally silencing real emotions?
Oh, I have feelings. Contentment with godliness is great gain is one of the ones I see weaponized a lot, which is basically shut up, don't feel. And that is unhelpful, to say the least. So there is an aspect of contentment. These things are not mutually exclusive, which I think is really important. You can have longing, you can have desire, you can feel disappointment, you can feel hurt, you can feel sad, you can feel all the feels, and still be content and happy in your life. They are not mutually exclusive. So, I think sometimes we get into that dichotomous thinking where it's one or the other. There is no in between. And that just isn't reality, right? And that is actually a way of healing from some of the harm that you've experienced. Because when we've been in a harmful relationship, when we've been under coercive control, we for sure can get into that dichotomous thinking. It's either good or it's bad. There's nothing else. But I can feel all of those things and go, it's really hard to not have a partner, and I really wish I had one. And I absolutely love getting into my van and not having to tell somebody where I'm going, other than letting people know where I'm going to be for safety reasons and all of that. But, I don't have to tell anybody where I'm going. I don't have to ask if it's cool with the other person, or if they had plans that I didn't know about, or any of that. I just get to go. And so that can be a joyous experience also. So it'd be great if I had a partner that would come and travel with me in their own van. Vans are too small for two people. They need to get their own vehicle. But, Yeah, it would be great if they came with me, but also I know that I don't have to not live my life because of that. So both of those things I can hold in tension and still have great contentment with my life. So I can live in that contentment of the where I am, and I can also long for something as well. And both of those things are fine.
Mhm.
Wow.
I would say that's the same thing is true of the whole forgiveness conversation, right? Like put it in those same kinds of lines that you have to forgive or God won't forgive you, that kind of thing. But and it often predisposes people to just suck up the feelings and keep hanging in there, whatever that looks like, try to be content. And if they're not, they're then called bitter or disobedient or unforgiving or whatever it is. But in reality, feeling the effects of someone's harm against you, like that's a very real thing. Again, if it didn't matter, you wouldn't feel anything about it. But because it hurts, you're going to have all kinds of feelings, and that's not about forgiveness. At that point, it's not the forgiveness piece of it. Forgiveness is refusing to allow it to have power over you. But that's not the same thing as removing the feelings from you and still participating in whatever the relationship was simply because you've now dismissed it or covered it over or became content because they used words of apology or whatever. So same kind of conversation of, just do the thing, forgive, and forget what it feels like, because that's sinful or wrong. Your heart's going to be deceptive, lead you into wrong, that kind of thing is not the truth.
Yes. Wow. All of that was so good. Thank you so much. I love that. There's so many beautiful things about being single that you get to enjoy, as what you're saying too, that you do not get to enjoy in a relationship. So take advantage of those things and enjoy them. The ministry God's given you, or your life in the van, or whatever that is, camping, all the things that would probably shift in a relationship. There's beautiful on both sides, and cultivate that. So
And
I love that.
I'll just note too that like in the scriptures, Paul's like, hey, you could totally stay single. It unencumbers you, so we never hear a sermon on being single and following Jesus, which is really unfortunate. Now, I can't say it never occurs. I've personally never heard one. And I think it's an opportunity for pastors to say like, hey, there can be goodness here. And I see in the chat that like, it's really confusing sometimes when someone is like, oh, you just need to get a man. And this person was saying, but I don't need a man. I don't need a partner in that way. And that is true, right? You might be going, is something wrong with me because I am content as a single person? And the answer is no, you're fine. That's great. And I think we should always ask questions of our heart, like, am I just icing out something and whatnot? But like for some people, truly, it's like, no, I'm really good. I'm okay. And that is a fine place to be. You're not broken because you're content. And I want to just say that clearly, because I don't want people to think, well, I don't feel that way. Is something wrong with me? No, you're good. Go live.
Yes, I love that. And it's so great too. I just want to throw one thing out there, is that you can build such a life that you love, that it also makes it harder that you're not going to choose the wrong person either. Because when you've learned to cultivate a life that you enjoy as a single, and it's going to change in a relationship, then that makes your picker a little bit better than to be like, I'm desperate for somebody. I'm like, I have a great life. I want somebody that's going to add something to my life, versus I need somebody to create this for me. And so I really like that you said all those things. It gets me excited. And my next question is for Tabitha, and that is, from a trauma perspective, why doesn't spiritual truth alone always quiet emotional longing? And I know we've kind of touched on this, but I'd love to see you go a little bit deeper in this.
Yeah, because take 2 verses and call me in the morning is incredibly unhelpful, frankly.
Yes.
Right? Like, I can hear spiritual truth, but if I do that absent what I am feeling, then I'm spiritually bypassing myself, right? God can handle both things. So I can read the scripture that says that it's okay to be single. It's better to be single because I can just follow hard after the Lord, and I can still be sad. So if I'm not saying, yeah, I notice the sadness, the longing, the desire, and again, this might be moment by moment or even in a different day. Like, I will tell you, for me, most times I'm like, great, this is amazing, right? Like, I am a fully baked cake. If I had a partner, it'd just be icing. Truly, that is what I believe. But there are days when I'm like, I really like icing today. And so I can feel that. And no amount of like slapping a Bible verse on it is going to make me not sad that day or in those moments. And that's okay. So, you know, we want to ingest spiritual truth so that it does become part of our DNA. Sometimes we have to disentangle that from the harm that we have previously experienced because scripture was weaponized against us. And so there can be some healing that we need in that space. But I also need to say, I do feel this way, and it's okay that I feel this way. And that doesn't mean I don't love Jesus or that my faith isn't strong enough or any of those things. So it's again that tension of the both and pulling ourselves out of dichotomous thinking to go, yes, I am fully, fearfully, wonderfully made. I am complete in Christ. I am a holy nation, a royal priesthood. I am those things because God says I'm those things. And it would be super great to have a partner. Or, you know, it would be super great if people would stop asking me if I'm getting a partner, right? If you are in that contentment space. And those two things are not in opposition with each other. So learning to lean into and allow yourself to feel is often part of recovery because we probably weren't allowed to have our feelings in our destructive relationship. So being able to have the full expression of how we feel, how it feels in our body, all of those things is part of growing and healing.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. That it's, yeah, there are definitely hard days, and that's okay. And maybe some people don't feel those hard days. They really don't desire somebody. That's great. But it's okay for those that do that. And that kind of leads me on to our next subject, and that is holding hope. Okay. So for those of us that are like, you know, I do hope that God sends a person in my life. Let's talk about that. What does it look like to hold on to hope, but yet not let hope crush us into despair? I would love to see, what does that look like? Living in hope, both in one hands. What is all of it? Let's talk about it. Healthy hope look like, living look like. Let's combine it. Let's see.
I think it's building a life in the moment where you are, and that is building relationships, living more with a sense of purpose and meaning, creativity. What do you love? Doing it. If you want to go on a trip, where is it that you want to go? But I think many times holding on to hope is living as much in the moment with purpose that you can.
I think I would if I was working with someone through this process, just to answer these questions, I would have them actually define what they mean by hope, and at some point be able to separate the definition of hope from the definition of longing. Because if our hope is set on these things that we long for, at the end of the day, we have made those things our God, essentially. At some point, it's like if that thing doesn't happen, then I have no hope. I lose my hope. I have no meaning, no purpose, kind of like you just said, Georgia. There's nothing to life because this thing that I hope for isn't coming to pass. And so if we can define what we mean by hope, which I would actually tie into surrender to God. Like that is our hope. Separate that from longing. And again, being able to hold sacred the longings, those are good and right and true. And living in a world where, you know, we have to work really hard to work towards the things that are good and right and true, because we have a very real enemy that wants to kill, steal, and destroy at every step. And so I think parsing that out a little bit enables us to find the hope that is the anchor for our soul, that says, you know, at some point, God is going to answer the desires of our heart because he's God. Justice will be done at some point while we walk towards the longings, the things that we want to have happen, that we hope to have happen. So hope, capital hope, maybe, and maybe that's a way to put it, capital hope versus small h hope, but parsing that out a little bit so that it doesn't end up in, oh, the things that I hoped for never happened. And so I am now just in despair.
Yeah, I love that. And I pulled a quote from a podcast episode I did with Dr. Jenny Bayless of Fuller Seminary. She's over their marriage and family therapy program there, and she is brilliant. And we had a talk about hope, and this is how she defined it. I think of it as a way of seeing. So I envision like hope goggles. And so this hope vision allows me to see more realities and greater truths than my eyes can see without it. The hope vision also requires that I see and touch pain, or else I don't believe it's hope anymore. I think it's wishful thinking. It has to be anchored in reality. And so I think of hope. My hope lens is a way of seeing more that gives power and agency and healing. That's actually very real, but it's not tied to a particular outcome. It's actually more anchored in who I am and God's infinite, constant, eternal presence within me in his creation. And I love that definition because it doesn't negate pain. Like hope is that longing, right? It is knowing that something's coming, but we're not yet there yet. That's basically what Hebrews is saying about hope. And
Mhm.
so, and faith is part of hope. And so,
Yes.
really knowing that like it's so much bigger than the outcomes and that we can trust the one who holds it.
Yes. Wow. That's so good. All of those things. I'm like, yes, that really spoke to me. And my next question is for Sharman. And that is, I want to know about in your coaching work. What happens when women, I'm going to kind of shift the question here a little bit because I think you would like this one. What happens when a woman shows up and she's longing for singleness? I mean, longing for marriage, having a hard time with her singleness. How would you help her shift her focus from being, hey, this is something to solve, to contentment as a single person, like maybe
Mhm.
an overwhelming desire type thing that's just, it's running their life.
Mhm. I think that the biggest thing that shifts is agency, which I define as the God-given right and responsibility to live in the world that you're in, which includes learning and perceiving from what's around you and taking steps to live in the space that you're in. So that's one of the biggest shifts that happens when she stops seeing her singleness as a problem to solve. And the reason I say that is because when you look at singleness as a problem to solve, it means you are looking for this person to complete you, like we talked about a minute ago. So you're looking for someone else to tell you your value, someone else that you can live your life alongside, but that shapes who you are and what you do. And so when you actually look at it like it's not a problem to solve, but it's a longing to join forces with somebody to live life, but to add to your life. So that agency, being able to look at the world like, well, here's what I've got to work with. Here's where I am in my own spiritual journey, my own physical journey, my developmental capacity. How do I understand my place in this world and then make my choices about how to step into it? And with that sense of self, you're actually much better positioned to choose what kind of relationships that you give access to your heart within, right? So you do become a better picker, not just of a person you settle with, so to speak, but a picker for any of the relationships around you. You learn to operate within. I always say that every relationship you're in can only be as deep as the shallowest person, because you can't connect to what's not the truth, right? So when people just live really shallow lives, they've got all their authenticity hidden somewhere. You can't connect to that. But when you're living as a deeply authentic person, you're going to interact differently with people where you're not taking offense to how shallow they are. You just don't make as much time for them. And you gravitate more towards the deeper people. So you end up building a life where you are connecting way differently than you did before across the board, which helps answer the loneliness question in you. But you're doing it from a standpoint of strength. Agency is a strength. You have a God-given right and responsibility to choose your steps. So that's how I think, at the end of the day, when you don't manage it as something to be fixed, you look at it like, well, now it's a catalyst to do some personal growth.
And I think we got to remember our lives, our stories are so much bigger than our relationship status. Whether I'm single again, divorced in the moment, whatever, we're far bigger than whatever our status is right now, even though relationships are critical.
Right. And intimate relationships are not only romantic relationships. I think anytime we hear intimate relationship, we automatically jump there, and our society pushes that. But I have wonderful intimate friendships with my male and female friends. Like, we talk, we're close, I feel seen, cared for, and loved. No, it is not the same as somebody living in my house with me, and being remarried and all of that, but they are still delightful and wonderful. And I can get the relational connection I need in those places. So when we're talking about being an authentic person, like, that also brings people to you that are authentic. Now, I do want to mention that authenticity is not trauma dumping at the grocery store on the cashier. If you need to do a little work around that, that's not authenticity. Well, I told them exactly what I thought. Like, Paul also says that we should speak in love, or we're just noisy. And so, we might need to do a little work around that to kind of figure out what that looks like. And I think when I hear Charmin talk about what authenticity is, it's, hey, here are my boundaries and here's what's good for me. And I really love talking about these kinds of things. And, I'm a massive theological nerd. If you guys haven't figured that out, I love to talk about that stuff. And I'll dig into original language stuff. Like, I'm a weirdo that way. And so I have such a fun time nerding out theologically with some friends. And there are going to be other friends who are like, I would rather have you claw my eyeballs out, Tabitha. Could we not? So I'm not going to have those conversations with those friends. But in that authenticity, they love that about me. They love that piece of me that is a giant nerd and likes to look at different things and might just bust out a random scientific fact that she learned because she's excited, right? And so even though there are going to be different topics with different friends who maybe have different flavors of what they love to talk with me about, they're still going to love who I am. And I don't have to dim my light so someone else feels better. All of our light can coexist together because we have an infinite God that made us all infinitely in creative ways.
Wow. Yes, all of that. I love that. And that's our own work to do. It's part of going through these things and being single. We have to do the hard work to figure out who we are, where we're going in life. So reach out to these ladies. Y'all, they're going to be at a retreat, and I'm really excited about that. They're all going to be speakers at our He Makes All Things New Women's Retreat, April 30th through May 3rd. So you can come and learn more about these things. Like, how do I begin to show up in the world authentically? How do I know who I am, my boundaries and healthy relationships, and all the different topics they're going to be speaking on. And you can sign up still for a retreat. I'll drop a link, but also we sponsor 100 women to a retreat that cannot make it otherwise. And right now we're in a campaign to raise $65,000 to sponsor 100 women. We've raised $33,000 of that amount. So we invite you to be part of that. $650 sends one woman to the retreat, and to prayerfully consider how you can send a woman that is broken through abuse and is longing to be able to discover these things so that she can walk whole and healthy with the Lord. And so, yeah, please consider partner. I'll drop a link in the comments. But we're going to jump into our last question. So don't go yet. It's going to get good. So I kind of want to go a little bit deeper too, and just kind of talk about some things that maybe some women are just afraid to talk about. And when it comes to singleness, and that is more along the lines of wrestling with God. Because let's be honest, there's times that you really wrestle God. I know I specifically have. I've been single for 8 years, which has been great. But there's times where God has just been like, no, don't pursue that. No, don't do this. And sometimes that can create a lot of tension of, God, why do you say no to things that are good? Why is this where I'm at right now? And how do you hold that tension of my desire before God, but also I guess it's a comparison too. If you say yes sometimes to some people, no to other people, how do you hold all that together? I guess I don't know if that makes sense as a question. If it doesn't, I can clarify it.
You hold it loosely. With open hands, it's, yes, this is what I want, but I'm not going to demand it, because at the bottom, I believe God wants what's best. So what I think might be best for me might not be best. And I have argued with God at times. And it's that authentic relationship starting with him. But yeah, holding it loosely.
Yeah. Which I think is what surrender is. Like, if you think about it, our greatest act of surrender with God is whatever we're doing today, God, yes, I'm in. And I know you hold my times in your hands, whatever that looks like. And I think, it's easy to say that. Like, we've all read the story of Job, and all the things that he lost, with the end of the story being such a pretty nice picture with a bow on top, without recognizing that somewhere along the way there, even Job had to wrestle with, why bother trusting God? Why bother? Why? What is that going to mean? There's nothing. Everything was stripped from him. And yet he came to that place where he was able to say, though he slay me, yet will I praise him. So I think, as we look at our own stories, there's actually no other context in which we are so challenged to question how much we really trust God. Because, I was married to a pastor's kid. Like, I went into that marriage totally knowing that we both had life to figure out together, but I could count on that we both knew that God was in this, and that marriage is a good thing, and God wanted us to stay together, all the good things. I thought it was God redeeming my story at the time. And then, fast forward, a wrestling with the reality that this wasn't like, it's not just about trusting God and that he makes it all good. It's that when you trust God, you also have to trust that he knew that was going to be my story. He knew that it wasn't going to be a reconciled marriage. He knew it was going to be a lot of heartache that I wasn't going to understand, and that I was going to cuss at him a lot for it. Not to cuss at my ex, cuss at God a lot for it.
Mhm.
And so, it's that space really where no other relationship will so challenge you. Well, maybe your kids might, but no other relationship will so challenge you to actually question your faith. And so it is actually vitally important to look at that, like, well, what really is God trying to do here? Because if he is the God of the universe, surely I can trust him to hold my times in his hands, even when it looks like this. Because I know with me doing what I can do to make it work, it is not working.
Definitely agree with all of that so much. And just knowing that, like, he's a good God, no matter what the suffering is, no matter what it is that we experience, that he is trustworthy, and not like we would consider a human trustworthy. It's so much more trustworthy. And these words I'm about to read really resonated with me. It is from the book, The Place Between Our Pains, which is KJ Ramsey, and it comes out in May. But I've been reading through it because I'm going to interview her soon. And this really just like landed for me, and maybe it'll land for other people. We do not merely heal from trauma to prevent future pain. We heal so that we can be present in the midst of any pain that comes. And that is true, right? We're not promised easy this side of heaven. We just aren't. There are going to be scars and struggles, but we have a God that holds us close, even if we can't feel him, even if we're really mad at him. And like you were saying, Charmin, you're like, I had some words I wanted to say to God. And I have had those moments, and they come out in my journal where I'm like, what are we doing, Jesus? I don't like this. I don't want this, and then much like we see in Lamentations. And if you've never read Lamentations chapter 3, there's this end verse of it that's, talking about, but, I trust God. Read from the beginning of Lamentations 3. He's not doing well. He's not happy. It's really hard. Read it and really look at the words. And sometimes we are in that call to lament the brokenness of this world, to lament the harm, to lament the scars that we walk forward with when we're survivors. We can lament all of those things and cry out to God and say, I don't understand your plan. I have these desires and these longings that you have not yet met. And it's really tough, Lord, in this moment to know what to do with all of that. Can you please just walk with me? And that can be such a beautiful thing. One of the things I talk about in my own life is fighting for my yet. I might not be healed in this area yet. I might not understand God's plan yet, right? Yet this, I can hold that tension of the now and the not yet, but knowing that the yet is coming. And it might not look like my plan. It might not look like where I want it to be, but the yet is coming, and it is held by a good God who loves me. And I can trust that. And so sometimes we feel like we're holding onto the cross till our fingers bleed, not going to lie, but he is there with us, even in the darkness. We have a suffering Savior who endured all of the things, so he is not immune to or disinterested in our pain.
Yeah, in Lamentations 3, Jeremiah, and it was when Jerusalem was being destroyed, he said, "Great is thy faithfulness." And I think that's something we have to hold on no matter what the destruction is or what it looks like in the moment.
Yeah. And if you can't get to that place, right, to the great is thy faithfulness, read Psalm 88. Psalm 88 does not have a happy ending. Thankfully, Psalm 89 does, or we'd all just fall off the face of the earth probably. But Psalm 88 is like, I'm having a bad day and I'm having a bad day. And that, I think, I remember hearing a teaching on that once and going, well, that doesn't seem very godlike. But oh my goodness, it's so very real. And so just know, like, we will get to great is thy faithfulness, but we might have a Psalm 88 kind of day where we go to bed and we're like, I just need a nap and a snack like Elijah did. And God sustains us.
Ooh, all of that's so good. I love how y'all talk about dealing with all of this authentically before God. And I want to close out with this one question. It just keeps hitting my mind. And y'all can lead into them, how they can contact you too. Because what if a woman, I see so many women and I know they're struggling. What would you say to her today? Not, I shouldn't say to me we're struggling. I know many women who are struggling with this, being single and feeling like, gosh, there's just no healthy men. There's nobody there. So they're tempted to compromise on things that are really essential, or their friends begin to think your standards are too high. That's why you're single. What would you say to that woman today that is holding the end of, yeah, if I live this way, I may be single for a very, very long time because I know who I am. I know what I bring to the table, and I know what I'm looking for a healthy relationship. What would you say to her today about people who put pressure on her to compromise? Maybe she feels tempted to compromise. What would you say to her? Because I think that's a big part of singleness too, as well.
For those who were married before, this might not apply to those who have never been married. Maybe long-term relationships would count, but I would say recall to mind what it looked like to settle for someone that was destructive to your soul. Recall to mind what that looked like. And remind yourself why you are where you are so that you aren't a fool. What is it that as a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool returns to its folly? Like that's in the Bible. Learn and build strength to keep reaching for what you know is good and right and true. Because if you settle for something destructive to your soul, you're actually going right back to the situation you were in again, where at some point it will again have you feeling really, really small without a voice and probably actually feeling pretty numb, not able to see what God is doing. So, having high standards, high longings is good and right and true. And what's worth having is worth fighting for, even if there don't seem to be any good men around.
And just like Eve in the garden, who, when Satan tempted her, well, does God really have my best in mind? That apple looks pretty good. When we start to doubt, does God really have our best in mind? Please don't take matters into your own hands, because Satan is more than willing to give you far more than you bargained for. So no matter what it looks like, be willing to live in the moment. And it doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It could mean something's right with you because you're holding on to those standards and doing the next right thing.
I would agree with all of that so much. And again, if you have been married in a destructive relationship, you might have felt, I was single long before I was single and it was not a good time. And so just remembering that, sometimes rocks of remembrance of what it was like can be really helpful. And if you haven't been married before, again, these are good and right desires to, have a partner, to have an intimate partner, to remarry. Those are all fine. But, unless you are legitimately unreasonable. And if you're sitting there going, I might be legitimately unreasonable, like they have to be 6'2", an investment banker. What was that meme that was going around for a while, whatever that is? Like, if you have those, if you have those standards, talk with somebody, one of us, somebody at one of our groups, those things would be probably good to ferret through if that's really happening for you. But if it's, I'd like a godly man who really is single, not just I'm separated single, not all of the things that I don't know if you've been on dating apps, but they're a little terrifying at times, that, they're real single, and they really love Jesus and they're not faking it and they're not, legalistic and all of those things. Those are reasonable standards. If you want someone to honor your personhood, your values, your dreams, in the way that you would also honor theirs, then that's not too high a standard. So just know that there are good men out there, first of all. They do in fact exist. If God wants one to find you and you to find them, he can make that happen. We don't always understand timing, fair enough. But there are good men. And I think that when we are coming out of destruction is something good to remember. At times in modern evangelicalism, it wants to pit men and women against each other as if we are enemies, and we are not. We are all made in the image and likeness of a living God. And our brothers, there are good brothers out there, who are single and love Jesus, and that, might make an excellent partner. And there are some people that we should not partner with because they are not healthy humans. So, the dating scene can be really difficult. There are definitely more frogs than princes, for sure. And, wrestling with that, but also community. Have conversations, talk with your friends, sometimes writing out your dating experiences in a journal and going, that was special. I went on a date with this one guy, and I'm not kidding, the entire time he talked about Taylor Swift. And I was like, oh, okie dokie then. And that was a no for me, dog. I love that you love Taylor, but that is not date conversation. And so it was a one and done, but it made a great story. And I have a lot of funny memories from it. So also holding it all with a loose hand as well, and looking at it as a little bit of an adventure, and sometimes just sad and scary and laughy and all of those things. Those things can also help you kind of walk through that path.
I agree. Dating can be difficult, can be complex, but that doesn't mean we avoid it.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. And it can be painful too at the same time. And that doesn't mean that you don't let God refine you through those things as well, and trust his goodness and let go when he says, let go, because he's good. You never regret when he says, let go, and you look back and you're like, well, God, that made sense now. Thank you for seeing what I did not see. It's worth it. And seeing God's goodness and faithfulness to those through your singleness, and seeing him show up in the little ways through friends and through just the life that he gives you. And so, yeah, singleness is a good gift too at the same time. So thank you guys for sharing all those things. And I'm so excited that y'all are all here. This is such a good conversation, and they're all going to be here, like I said, at the retreat. So if you want to, they're on Facebook. So if they want to come back and comment, this will be uploaded to Facebook. You can connect with them. We highly recommend them at Call to Peace. They offer great services, Tabitha and therapy, Georgia and Sherman and coaching. So reach out to them, connect with them as well if you want somebody to walk alongside you. So thank you so much, ladies, for being here today. Thank you for everybody who joined us. And look forward to connecting with y'all again.
Thanks for having us.